All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this live webinar session organized by KCMconnect. On behalf of the organization, I, Abhilash Acharya, who's the Chief Strategic Advisor to KCMconnect, will be coordinating and moderating this session for today. So today we are going to take up a topic as transportation and logistics scenario in India, challenges, opportunities, and innovation. So therefore, going forward, I'll briefly describe a bit about KCMconnect. Today, we have a panel of eminent educationists, counselors, and many other professionals who have joined us. So for them, KCMconnect is an IT consultancy services provider company established in a couple of years ago, which is specializing in customized software applications, pioneering in applications on transport and logistics, and has taken active initiatives in technical and skill development along with Industry Culture Connect. So on behalf of KCMconnect, I welcome our two esteemed speakers for today. Before starting the session, let me remind you of some of the rules. So this webinar will last for about 40 or 45 minutes, where our esteemed speakers will share their valuable ideas on the issue. Thereafter, we'll take questions one after another. To ask a question, please use the reaction button and then write your query in the chat box. The moderator will then allow the participant to ask the question in person. I would also like to request you all, before asking any question, please give your introduction to the audience. Participants are not allowed to switch on audio or video during the running session. In case of any query, please use the chat box only to let the moderator know of your concern. So I once again thank you all for participating in today's webinar. Before we start, I'd like to introduce our eminent speakers for today. So our first speaker is Dr. Debjit Roy. So Professor Roy is an associate professor at IIM Ahmedabad, and he teaches the subject production and quantitative methods, a domain merging economics, operations management, and logistics. He is also a visiting professor at the Rotterdam School of Management, Erasmus University, and Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan in the US, where he is actively involved in both teaching and research in the broad areas of operations and logistics. He holds a PhD in industrial engineering with a major in decision sciences, operations research, and a minor in computer science and MS in manufacturing systems engineering from the University of Wisconsin in Madison, besides an MSc in engineering from the prestigious IISc Bangalore. Professor Debjit Roy is IIM Ahmedabad's Professor of the Year 2020. So congratulations, sir, from KCM's behalf. Apart from winning awards for his research from various reputed bodies, Professor Roy is also the lead author of the first book on trucking business management published by McGraw-Hill. Recently, he got an additional responsibility as the Chairperson of Research and Publications Office at IIM Ahmedabad. So moving over to our next esteemed speaker, we have Shri Rajive NP with us. So Shri Rajive ji is Vice Chairperson at National Innovation Foundation, India. It is an autonomous body under the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. The NIF's mission is to create a knowledge-based society by expanding policy and institutional space for innovators and outstanding knowledge holders. NIF is expected to network with innovators, grassroots organizations, and the scientific fraternity to bring about a change towards creating a new India by 2022. He is also the Executive Director at Vivabhani, Innovative National Network of Science-Oriented Development Organizations under Vigyan Bharat. He also serves as Chief Executive Vision Consulting. He happened to be the former Dean at Hedge School of Applied Economics, former Assistant Vice President at Hedge Equities, and he even did his MBA from ICFA University, National Institute of Business Management. So today our floor is open. I'll invite our speakers to discuss on the modern day transportation challenges and what are the possible changes that may happen and how transportation can be transformed in itself, and also it can transform our knowledge society as a whole. So over to our speakers and over to Professor Debjit Roy.
Thank you. Thank you for the generous introduction. I was planning to have a short presentation to discuss some of the challenges that the entire trucking fraternity is going through in these tiring times. So maybe we do that, and then I will request our second speaker to take that. And once we have the speakers, then we'll open the house for general discussion, right? So let me share my screen so that you all can see the presentation.
Screen share. Flashback on.
So, so when you're talking about transportation logistics in India, I will specifically focus on the trucking part of it, but many of these learnings can probably go to other modes of transport as well. So let us take a flashback on the fleet operators' challenges, basically pre-COVID scenario. And if you talk about pre-COVID scenario, the trucking industry or trucking fleet operators still had their lion's share of challenges. In particular, if you talk about challenges, I think the biggest challenge that even reels under the COVID scenario is the shortage of drivers, right? So even before the COVID pandemic struck us, we still had quite a bit of shortage of drivers. Like we had only like 0.65 driver for a truck. So if you see a truck is idle, so it's more for reason is probably we couldn't find a suitable driver to drive this truck. Not only that, I think, so we have been working with transporters quite long, and we often have this kind of concern from the transporters is that their asset utilization is quite low. And one of the reasons why they have low asset utilization goes back to their entire loading and unloading delays. I think that is a significant part of the delays that cause the asset to be less utilized. But the reasons, of course, could be lack of automation or technology. Maybe the information is not shared with the client. So there could be multiple reasons why the delays happen. And the other kind of challenges goes back to the kind of how the entire trucking industry is built. If we talk about fleet operators, majority even today remember the truck by the name, right? So you can ask their great-grandfather will still remember all the 1,000 trucks. Not only that, they will remember where the truck is, who is driving it, and so on and so forth. So what I'm hinting at is that largely the trucking business has been mostly family owned, and they are still adopting some of the legacy practices. So in that sense, they have not caught up yet with the kind of infrastructure in terms of technology and IT that other part of the world has already caught up with. You all already are aware of this. India is a large country in the sense like in the Europe, within 2 hours, you cross country borders. But here, maybe in 2 hours, you don't even cross a state. So our states are equal to some of the countries in the European Union, other places. So why I say that is important because while the drives are long haul, we do not have strict the hours of service rules. In many cases, the focus on driver safety is quite minimal, and the missing safety cabin features and all. So many cases, the truck operators buy the truck without the cowl, and then they actually put the cabins at a local body shop, which often misses the safety cabin features. And as I mentioned earlier, because of legacy practices, the GPS and ERPs is just catching up with the industry still. I think GPS started sometime in mid-2000, 2005, 6 around. And in the last 10 years, they are catching up with the ERP system. But still what is missing is the integration between the ERP and the GPS. And I'll see because of that, we still have a lot many challenges at in the transporters end. And the other common challenge that they often used to tell us is, well, there's also low entry barriers. So you almost have the truckers who can enter the entire competition with a single truck, and often with a low price, so they can easily get into the market, right? So these are some of the challenges. And the other challenge was also in terms of government regulations or policy changes also affected some of their operations on a day-to-day basis. Why I point this because after the COVID came, the workers were sent home, the factories were shut down, almost transportation stopped. In post-lockdown, the drivers migrated, the hassles for transport increases, the driver hazard pay, bonuses increase, demand gradually is catching up, but trucks are still standard. So now the drivers have transformed from a rare to a more rarer commodity, right? And I call it commodity because drivers, once you have them, they remain drivers for their life. They don't want to become a supervisor. They want to be a driver throughout the life. So they're a kind of commodity in that sense, but it just becomes a rarer commodity now. So if you see post the lockdown, even now, I would say the business is not still onto normal. We still have caught up maybe up to 70 to 40, 50% of the regular business. In some cases, probably we reach 70. But largely, I would say we are still at about 50% mark. So business haven't yet gone back to normalcy. And one of the reasons is, of course, the lack of drivers. Right, the drivers are too scared to even come back and take charges of their trucks. So if I have to summarize the challenges post-COVID, I think the old challenges still remain. It's just that it hurts even more today, right? So if we have shortage of drivers post-COVID, it's just hurting even more today. The lack of automation is hurting even more today. Utilization is even worse, and low demand is hurting even more for the trucks that are stranded. So what I want to talk in the next 20 minutes or so is what can the fleet operators do to recover from the crisis and resume the fleet operations to normalcy? In some sense, fleet operators may need to redefine their operating model, right? So I'll just talk about what does it really mean in terms of redefining their operations. And typically I say that there's no option but to raise the bar at this moment, right? Bar in terms of safety, productivity, speed. And I think also Rajiv mentioned about the sustainability aspect in his agenda. So sustainability is also a big kind of critical part in the whole equation. So I want to just dichotomize and talk about separate aspects, and then start with the network design and management aspect, and then go into how to improve the utilization of the trucks, drivers, and then go into some of the technology aspects that is also helpful to get the business to the new normal, right? In some sense, what I was suggesting is that if the fleet operators kind of look back at the challenges and redefine their business models, they probably should be going to a new normal. It's just not that you just wait and watch. Wait and watch will not help to move this business forward. They need to take a larger quantum leap. And to take a quantum leap, they need to redefine the way they manage the network, their assets, and also their workers and people. So I'm going to touch upon all of these aspects shortly. And in particular, first we'll start with the network design and the management piece of it. So the first piece which I'm talking about, network design and management, I'm going to focus a bit more on collaboration aspects, because I think because of the sheer size of each of the fleet operators, by alone, they cannot really make the quantum leap. They really have to come together, or they have to have a service provider that really helps to leverage the strengths of the fleet operators together, right? So we'll go into some of these details in the forthcoming slides. So one is, of course, the relay network. And if you heard about relay network, this has been already made popular in India, probably maybe about 5-6 years back, when Rivigo came into India with their relay driving based approach. However, we have to be cognizant of the fact that Rivigo is still working with their own assets, right? It is their own assets. They have about 2,000 trucks or so, even more maybe today. They have their operational pits where the drivers change the trucks, and it's more like a passing on the baton, right? So you have one driver taking the truck to a certain point, which may be 300 kilometers or less, and the other driver takes it from there and moves it further. So the second aspect that I want to talk is on the collaboration. So when I talk about redefining the business model, I'm talking about not only using the relay-based approach, but also collaborating and think how can we leverage this going forward. In some sense, what I'm trying to say here is that if you use relay approach plus the collaboration, you can probably optimize your driver resources. So let us think a bit back and see, like, what do you mean by collaboration? So today, if you want to use a relay approach, right? Um, so let us see, why are we even doing this? We're doing this because today's the drivers want to have short haul trips. They no longer want, at least not all are in the short term, they do not want to get into long haul transport where they stay on the roads for 30 days plus without reaching their home. So if that is something we are targeting to give them more of a short haul experience, you probably need to have multiple stoppages in between where the drivers can switch trucks, right? So if there are multiple operators that come together, they can probably share the driver resources and ensure that the driver goes back to the home the same day or the next day. Okay, so this comes a part of the collaboration that I'm talking about. And the truck moves from origin to destination using the relay-based approaches. Now, you can argue saying that, you know, in India, traditionally, this collaboration never worked because probably we didn't trust each other. We didn't trust because we could think that if you share drivers, probably the driver will run away with the truck, or it's possible that our client will go away. But today, when you talk about the value additions that a transporter provides, it's not so easy to switch. The switching cost or the hassle cost is a lot more. So I don't expect that to happen overnight. So I think if you use the relay and the collaboration with a few transporters getting together, you can definitely solve the problem of short haul trips and also ensuring that your resources or the fleets are optimally utilized. Now, one thing you have to be careful here is, one is for the short haul to ensure you have to look at the common routes between the transporters. So you have to figure out which are the common routes you and your partner transporter have, and probably on the common routes you can leverage some of these collaboration aspects. So it is important. Why? Because, well, shortages will exist. It was already there before the COVID. It just became more severe now. And you want to make your business sustainable, so you just cannot afford to let your assets be idle. You want to have short travel paths. You want the drivers to go back home. You want the drivers to be more comfortable. And at the end, you also want the utilization of the fleet to improve. So I think for that aspect, collaborations in different aspects are important. So from my interactions with the trucking operators, I already find that they already started collaborating in terms of the loads. So some of the loads are being transferred. So they're using their partner trucks to move loads. So in some aspect, it is happening. Different forms of collaborations are already taking place. It just needs to get stronger. And will it work? It really depends. So you have to have a similar kind of truck, so the driver is comfortable using both the kind of trucks. Probably commodity has to be same. And probably if the drivers are not from the individual company, it may have to be run by a driver marketplace. And the driver marketplace will definitely ensure that the quality of the drivers are ensured, and also the insurance and other aspects of the drivers has to be taken care of. So let's move to the next part, which is more about building capabilities to be resilient. When I mean resilient is that how do you absorb shocks? In particular, how do you absorb the operational variabilities, and how should we prepare for that? So there are three focus areas. One is asset and product flexibility. The other is the driver marketplace and incentives. And the third part is looking at the restructuring the customer base. So let us look at all of these three aspects. The first is asset or product flexibility. What does it really mean is that today if you talk to Volvo, right? Volvo trucks, you can customize them. You can change the location of the fuel tanks. You can change the chassis length. You can do different aspects of kind of moving and making the asset more flexible. But from a trucking perspective, it's good for a short-term absorbing shocks is to ensure that the trucks can carry a variety of commodities. So if it's very rigid, for example, if it's very rigid to handle only say ODC, or very rigid to handle only say a particular kind of fragile goods, in that case, you get wedded to a particular vertical. And when there is so much of uncertainty around you, the asset flexibility will really help you to ensure you carry multiple kinds of products. The second is, of course, looking at the driver marketplace and the incentives. This is interesting because if you see today, I would say 99.99% of the transporters pay their drivers based on the mileage. How many kilometers did you drive in a day, right? And that's not the true metric for paying drivers, because the drivers are often stranded at the loading or at the unloading area for sometimes days, right? With no fault of theirs. But they have to pay for the hassle cost, and they are going through all the kind of trauma that is associated with waiting. So as a transport company, we should also think about how can we redefine the incentives for the driver, which is not just purely based on the travel, but also based on the first and the last mile issues like the loading as well as delays in the unloading, right? And finally, the fleet operators probably has to think about redefining the customer base, which is more suitable for the pandemic or the post-pandemic era. This is one example. Are you paid for the time invested in loading and unloading times, right? If it is not, the driver needs to be paid. What it shows is that the loading and unloading times could be much greater than just the transport. So if you have to increase the driver throughputs, you need to start charging your client the detention fee for the loading and unloading. And this already happens in the vessels. So in the container terminals, I think already you get paid the detention fee if your vessel is being stranded for more than whatever time is allocated, right? So there should be some kind of threshold that you have to use to pay the drivers beyond certain times. So other is the need for driver marketplace, as I mentioned earlier. I think we would need platforms that offer the drivers and to match the drivers with fleet operators, just to ensure that their fleet utilization is improved. And probably we need to have multiple rest areas. We could call them as terminals, where the driver exchange happens, as well as, probably drivers can move back home. But we have to see who operates these truck terminals, whether it is a service provider who operates them, or it is a kind of association operates them. But probably we would need multiple on the way such terminals, which can help to not only exchange trucks, but also help to exchange the drivers. And some platforms may already exist informally. At least I know in the US, you already have truck exchange terminals. But a formal formation of private platforms can partially address this challenge. In a long run, the driver marketplace should be enabling high quality commercial vehicle training capability to also ensure the shortage of drivers. As I mentioned earlier in one of my articles, there are such organizations in the US already, called the Slip Seat, for example. Slip Seats helps to match the idle drivers with the idle trucks. And the drivers provide their own rates, and the fleet operators can utilize the trucks better. So such models already exist, not only in other countries, and probably we should be thinking why we cannot go to this kind of a model. There could be multiple challenges, and we have to just address them in a long run. In short run, it might be harder, but we need to demonstrate with some prototypes. So I think we need to show with some prototype that this indeed is possible. However, we need to relook into several issues. And the issues could be multiple. It could be who takes the care of the insurance of the drivers, who takes care of the, when you're exchanging trucks with a container. In India, for example, every truck is associated with only maybe 10 to 15 kind of chassis. So if you're exchanging, the limit options becomes limited. So what are the possibilities that exist without, with the current regulations in place? So I think it requires a kind of brainstorming, but I think if we can do this kind of a marketplace with the truck driver exchange possibilities, I think the life of the drivers becomes much more smoother. And also, I hope they'll be willing to come back into this driving platforms. Okay, let's move on to the next piece of the discussion, which is on the resource management, looking at drivers and the trucks together. So going more into tactical levels, we all know the drivers are the frontline workers. Today you hear there are many agitations going on the COVID insurance for the drivers. where you see from July 1st to July 7th, all the drivers are, I think, having their switch on their horns for 1 minute in the afternoon just to make a pledge or make a request to the government to take care of their insurance, because they are the ones who are moving both essentials as well as non-essentials during these tough times. So while we are very thankful to the truck drivers, we should also think that how we can improve their safety. So in this, we have already done some work which looking at both driver safety and productivity using a combination of GPS and ERP data. And such combinations helps to understand which kind of driver should be assigned to which kind of cargo. What we also found is that the drivers who are more safety conscious are also very productive in the long run. So we found some of these results in our detailed research that we have carried out in the last decade or so. So GPS provides figure out which driver is better in which particular aspect. You probably also realize this, drivers remain drivers for the life. They're not looking for any promotion. They don't leave companies to join for promotion. They leave because if the salaries are really pathetic, the lifestyle is not comfortable, they're not satisfied with the job, they're happy with the management styles, or this is the So what you see is that as the days gets passed by, if a driver is driving an older truck, the probability to stick to the company is much higher compared to the driver who is driving a old truck. And this is interesting because what it suggests is that if the operators divest their old polluting vehicles, they're also improving their driver retention. So this goes hand in hand with the asset technology as such. I know the government is already planning for the scrappage policies, and that what we are suggesting here is that the scrappage policy is aligned with the driver retention strategies. So that's what the main insight that we get from here is newer trucks also improve the driver retention in the organizations. The final thought is on the digital transformation. How can the trucking fraternity remain ahead of the game? If you talk about early 2000s, they adopted GPSs. In the early 2010, probably they adopted ERP. So now what, right? So now you have to really think about how can we transform to plug the leakages, and how can we use smart technology to improve the driver efficiency. I mean, that's one of the bigger aspects. So today, some companies are thinking about using sensors to find, to give early warnings about component failures. In some cases, to figure out the workers are not crowding in a particular place. These all things are good to have today, but tomorrow they will be must-have things. Just like GPS and ERP has become must-have now, I would say sensors are going to be a critical part of the operations of the trucking fraternity. This might be a slightly far-fetched, but it's still not very far. Having the blockchain with IoT, where you give real-time access to everyone in your product supply chain. So everyone, for example, client, the shipper, the carrier, everyone has access to the real-time information on your products, right? So the blockchain, you cannot really mutate the data so easily. You cannot really fudge with the data. It is real-time data, and everybody has access to the real-time data using the blockchain platform. A blockchain is already implemented in the container terminals. For example, Maersk and IBM already defined their trade lanes platforms. So I think here also you will see much more benefit by integrating all the players and putting them in the same platform. The other is connected vehicle concepts, where this, for example, Rombi, they produces bright yellow devices the size of a few sticks of butter that can attach to your shipments or vehicles and monitor conditions, right? Especially if you're going towards EV vehicles in the future, you probably need this kind of technology where to understand what is the current level of charge and whether your truck is going as per scheduled on the same routes. Did somebody tamper with the packages or the loads they're carrying? And if anything happens, an alert can be sent immediately to the network operations, right? So you really need to connect not only your truck, but also the loads real time with the whole platform. So we have to really be connected in the whole aspect as such. To summarize, I think it's time for collaboration and leveling up the game in terms of digital transformation that I mentioned. In some, you have to collaborate with routes, you have to collaborate in the workshops, hubs, you have to collaborate with the drivers to really ensure that the asset utilization gets better. And also we are providing value to our customers. And I also say that, COVID is nature's way to self-correct. To improve, you often need to disrupt. And I think this is the perfect timing, because if the whole supply chain is kind of standstill, it is right time to stop and reset. And I think we couldn't find a better timing to reset, because all actors supply chain need to stop, introspect, and take the corrective action. So in some sense, the COVID also gave us this opportunity while I'm not sure why we're waiting for it, but this is a good chance of correcting the whole supply chain kind of leakages. Yeah, there are a few of my articles that I've written in the last couple of months after the COVID scenario. I'll pass on these if you want to read more about some of these ideas. Yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say about some of the thoughts that Rajiv wanted me to speak on. But I'll be also happy after the second speaker speaks, we can take up more questions and see where we're heading to. Yeah, over to you, Rajiv.
All right. Thank you, Professor Roy. Thank you for your beautiful insights and sharing so much of novelty with us. I'm sure our audience have already gained a lot from whatever you have said. Moving over to our next speaker, Rajiveji. He can come in and maybe take us forward on what he has to share on transportation challenges during the pandemic outbreak, and whatever we can expect in the coming few years, whatever new changes that are bound to happen in the coming few years. Rajiveji, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Debjit. I think he has elaborately covered almost all the aspects of the transportation issues, the opportunities also. I would rather focus on the technology and innovation aspects. See, there are a lot of technologies which are going to actually disrupt this every sector as such. The technology for the future, the disruptive technologies, and especially the digital transformation has really made a good impact. And the COVID situation, which is actually rebooting Earth, has really given a lot of chances for how to come up with innovative solutions. So I would suggest that certain technologies which are going to drastically change each and every sector, like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and so on. And even the drone also is going to provide a lot of changes for the last mile supply and also the air logistics also. So a lot of technologies in the coming years are going to drastically change the way we are going to look at the transportation and the supply chain system. I would focus my presentation on, I am not going to give any presentation as such, just some thoughts. That is how this innovation and technology can be an inclusive one. See, while in National Innovation Foundation, we are focused mostly on the inclusive innovation ecosystem, which means whatever changes are happening in each sector, how it is going to affect the common man. For example, the transportation and supply chain directly affects the agriculture sector, the farmers, and also the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, all these consumer products, everything has to be affected. So how our innovative aspects can change the grassroots level aspects of the society, and how we can transform the life of the ordinary man. So these technologies which we are talking about, how it is going to affect the rural India, that is very important. So the technologies which are going to drastically change the landscape of the rural India through the inclusiveness and the innovativeness of the technologies, that is going to be a very important aspect while we look ahead. That is one point. Secondly, there are a lot of innovative ideas already in place from the common man, where they are actually trying to solve certain issues at the grassroots level. But that is not enough. Now the whole world has become one marketplace, and whatever produce is there from the farmer has to reach to the extreme end of the world. So how we can, as a previous speaker, Dr. Debjit rightly said, the collaborative aspect, how we can link with the various aspects, including the driver's beneficial aspects, how its quality can be improved, how the variety of drivers can be engaged in the various supply chain. All these things comes. It is through collaborative approach. But my point is how innovative can we can become to reduce the cost. The cost is one important aspect. How innovative thoughts can reduce the cost, how it can reach out to the need of the common man, that needs to be probed very much. Second aspect is there are a lot of new platforms coming up. For example, I am currently working with Tata projects regarding a bidding platform where the buyer and sellers meet. So buyer will be sitting somewhere in the world, and the seller will be from a rural area. So how these logistics can, once the bidding is matched, then now comes the sorting, packing, logistics, and all the supply chain aspects comes. So how it can be integrated. So this integration of the various stakeholders is very important while we look at this transportation and supply chain system. So the new technologies which are emerging, last 10 years, the whole transportation system, the mobility and the commuting, everything has changed. Now it is going to be the space air, which is going to take the next step, I think. The air taxis are on the line, and the drone technology is going to take over the last mile delivery system. So how we are going to utilize this so that whatever produce is there from the rural India is catered to the urban, and also the urban facilities are reaching to the rural. Like Dr. Abdul Kalam said, providing urban facilities for the rural. See, these amenities has to reach to the rural also. So the transportation has a great role to play. That is my point. So whatever facilities are there, it should be reaching to the last man on the village, or the last man who is in the in the system. So how to integrate the various aspects of this whole scenario, and how the collaboration can work faster, and technological interventions which are going to drastically change can be really utilized in a faster way. The Western world has come up with a lot of new ideas and new things. But of course, India has a lot of potential to utilize it, and our place, like a marketplace, is very potential, so that it can be utilized for the upliftment of the common man. So these things has to be taken into account. And I would just suggest that a National Innovation Foundation, which is working in the innovation ecosystem for the last 20 years, is providing some clear approach to the how we can take technology to the grassroots. One thing which we are doing is we are actually trying to scout and document all the innovative aspects, whether it is in the agriculture, whether it is in the food processing, whether it is in the transportation, or any aspects of the society. We actually try to identify the problems and how innovative solutions can be provided. We document it. Then the second step is we have a very good technology team where we will identify the innovation aspect in each of the ideas which is put forward from the grassroots. We will actually validate all these technologies and try to come up with prototypes. So these are all done from our various centers of NIF, especially from Gandhinagar. We have a very good team, and we have tie-up with almost all the research institutes. So how to come up with a prototype and validate it to the industry standards. So if you are taking up the issues on the transportation and the supply chain issues, if some digital technology is provided or some solution for improving the quality aspect of the driver or the safety aspect of the driving is put forward, so that we can develop it into a technology which is industry validated. And next comes how to protect the intellectual property of the innovator and how to commercialize it. All these 5 aspects we are covering for the last 20 years, and almost 1 lakh technologies are already digitalized from the which have come over a period. And we are actually, we have not come up with much technology on this particular sector, that is transportation and supply chain. I feel that this is one important area, especially our Prime Minister has said about the Atmanirbhar, and one important aspect is infrastructure and how to connect with the villages and the cities. That is very important. So the transportation and shipping is going to be one important aspect of this Atmanirbhar, or the self-reliance, which we want to have in the village level. So these aspects, I again reiterate that collaboration is one important key word which we have to think about, so that all these aspects which is going to drastically change the scenario, it should be inclusive also. So how to come up with inclusive ideas where all the stakeholders can be connected well, and it is reaching out to the beneficiaries in a faster manner. And how it can become cost effective and affordable. That is another aspect. How it can be technologies and services which are going to be provided reaches to the every aspect of the society, and how it helps in developing the quality of life. That is what I wanted to share. And thank you for inviting me. Even though I am directly not in this sector, I am closely watching this because I work for the societal development aspect through innovative technologies. And innovative technologies is one key word where it is going to be drastic, and also it is going to be affordable. So I am congratulating the organizers for bringing this sector into focus, which is going to drastically change how India is going to perform in the coming 10 years or so. So when India becomes the powerful economic nation in the first 3 nations in the world, of course, it has to be connected well with the villages, with the cities, and also the logistics and transportation has a great role to play. And I am looking for more and more innovative technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv ji, for sharing your wonderful statements with us today. And talking of innovation, I would request our ED, Rajiv ji, to share a small audio clip on Convoy. That is our small, sincere effort towards innovating in the logistics and transportation sector. And I'd want everyone who have joined us today to have a look at it. Rajiv ji, if you could please play the clip.
Can we do it after Q&A session?
All right. If needed, we can wait till the Q&A sessions are over and then add up on that.
Sure.
So our first question is from Mr. Suryakant Kumar. So if he is available, he can question the speaker directly. Mr. Suryakant Kumar.
Yes. Hello, my question is, okay, first of all, I will introduce myself. I am Suryakant and I'm pursuing PhD in the Department of Business Administration, National Taiwan University. So my question is not directly related to like trucking industry, but is something related to logistic industry and more specifically to warehousing. So what are some challenges which e-commerce warehouses in India or around the world are facing in their order fulfillment system due to this COVID pandemic? And furthermore, what is the way forward for the researchers as well as practitioners in the field of operations?
So Suryakant, can you introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm pursuing my PhD in Department of Business Administration from National Taiwan University.
Okay. Okay. Um, so, so shall I take this question? What do you, or
Yeah.
Okay.
I want you to take this question.
Okay. So I think there was your question had two parts to it. One is what are challenges from the e-commerce warehouse during these pandemic situations? Is that the first question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will give you a broader perspective. So while this pandemic was going through, I was spending my time in the US, but the challenges I think everywhere is the same. So as you remember, there are a couple of challenges. The first challenge that happened is during this pandemic is the safety of the workers were under question, because you can imagine warehouse is a dense operation, so you will have more than 5-6 people coming in close contact with each other, right?
Yeah.
So there was definitely concern about safety and worker crowding in the warehouse. So it was a very interesting puzzle, because if you think New York had the highest number of, one of the highest number of fatalities and infections, this also increased people to stay back home. So if people were staying back home, they also wanted to order much more using online. So the area that was infected more had also had an increase in the e-commerce volumes. And if the workers were infected in any of those warehouses, then the whole warehouse had to be shut down and they need to be quarantined. And probably the warehouse would have opened after like 14 days or so. So this was an interesting situation, because now, even if the warehouse is close by, you cannot ship the products from the close by warehouse, but from the far away warehouse. Okay, so those were some of the challenges. One was in terms of staffing, the other was in terms of order allocation. Those both were the big challenges of the pandemic situations. And trust me, this problem was not new. This problem was there before, also in a smaller scale. Like if you think about when we were hit by the Kerala floods, for instance. When the Kerala floods was hit, most of the warehouses in Kerala were shut down. And if people were restricted to stay at home, this also meant that the online orders were higher. Then you cannot have a nearby warehouse to supply to the customers, but you have to depend on a faraway warehouse. So these problems were there in a smaller scale before. It just became grander now and more severe now. So a couple of things: volume increased, the worker safety requirements increased. So you need to be both safe as well as productive now with the same number of people. Does that answer your question, Suryakant?
Yeah, and the second part of that question. So
For a second part, can you repeat that again? So can you repeat your second part of the question? I don't think he's there around.
hello.
Yeah, so you can.
Yeah. So what is the way forward for researchers? Some interesting research problems or something like that, and also from practitioners' point of view.
Well, for researchers, it's an open field, right? If you have to motivate this from the practice, you can already find out what are the optimal policies, for instance, for order allocations. How do you staff warehouses during pandemic situation or uncertain times? They're all interesting questions, right? So.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. I think Mr. Suraj's questions were answered adequately. We'll move over to the next question from Mr. Tanuj Kapta. So if you are around, you can ask the question directly to Professor Debjit Roy. Mr. Tanuj Kapta.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And my question is actually to Professor Roy, and this is regarding the containerization. As we know that we have excess capacity in terms of container port terminals, but overall containerization in India is very low, much lower than the global average and much, much less than that in the developed nations. And this also kind of inhibits the automation of cargo handling at the land side, especially truck loading, unloading, etc. So what do you think are the prime reasons for this? Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, Tanush. It's an interesting question. So there are multiple reasons to it, right? So when you think, let me first take a port's perspective. If you think a port is developing a terminal, it looks at maybe 30 years forward. See, because the payback periods for these heavy equipment assets are quite long. So you build with a future excess capacity anyways. So if you start a terminal, you'll probably think about the growth requirements post 30 years and build the terminal today. Right? Because the payback periods are such longer, you really need to be sure about the kind of equipments and all choices. So that said, you would expect the content terminals to have excess capacity. But what are the reasons in India specifically, apart from those? I think there are many. I think one is in terms of trains, or because if you do, train containerization is also not, is getting there, but still the capacity of the lines is still lower. Also, I would say it adds to the delay probably for the domestic travel. So you probably just use a parcel load and use a truck to move the products. But in general, I would say containerization would definitely help for end-to-end kind of shipment from directly from the consumer, directly from the shipper to the consumer end-to-end. And it will really remove many of the inefficiencies and delays in the system. But to sum this up, one is you need excess capacity for the future because it is a long-term project. And second, as we enhance the train line capacities and as we increase the number of engines to carry the train loads in containers, you would see that will improve over time.
Thank you, sir. And I forgot to introduce myself. I work for Indian Ports Association in New Delhi. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tanush.
All right. So thank you for your questions. Thank you, participants, for being so encouraging in our session. So now we would like to move over to showing you the small clip of Convert, our innovation, our small and sincere effort on the part of innovating in terms of roadway transport and logistics. Rajiv ji, if you can take over to the new video clip.
Thank you very much, Abhilash ji.
Thank you.
And I'm really delighted to host Professor Debjit Roy and esteemed speaker Shri Rajive and PG. And it was really insightful to get the knowledge from both the speakers. And what we have also done from our part, I just want to show that. And this is, I would say, as MVP, which our CTO calls it, minimum viable product that we would like to take to the market. And later on, we will surely have, and we surely have a lot of scope to uh, modernize it. Yeah, so I'll show that video. And this video was actually we prepared for our inauguration purpose, which was held on 23rd of June on the eve of Rath Yatra. So I'll show you that video. So is my screen visible now?
Yes.
So thank you, Rajiv ji, for sharing that clip with us once again. We have Professor Prabal Sen with us. So sir, if you can share your 2 cents on how transportation can be improved and whatever attempts that we are making towards transforming this particular sector. So your thoughts and your pearls of wisdom.
You're muted.
You are mute, sir.
So you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have unmuted. I
Okay,
have
okay.
unmuted.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't have much to say. I will only say that I have learned quite a lot from the insights of Professor Debjit Roy and what Mr. Rajiv had to say about the real purpose of innovation. What should be the real purpose of innovation in the Indian, context? I would only like to Devjit to throw light on whether or not the the state of the art innovation which has been launched by Rajiv in the name of Convoy, whether that will speed up and whether speeding up of the trucks will have a lot to do with the overall economic outcome.
Indeed. In fact, I didn't see the convoy presentation yet, but seems like I was thinking on very similar lines in terms of what are required currently. And from what I know, the current challenge that lies in front of us is the transporters have been very privy of their own operations and their clients and their products and the loads. So it is extremely hard to collaborate. So collaboration is not in their jargon or not on the vocabulary list. So it's often extremely hard for the transporters to collaborate, share assets, share drivers. These things are foreign to them. So we have to make the service provider successful, we have to first demonstrate it. So once we can demonstrate with a few transporters, getting onto the platform and showing some kind of benefit that they recoup in the short run, I think that will spur more people to join in. It's definitely a need of the hour. It's just that people are resistant to take up such kind of roles. So if we can show a prototype that, and in a functional form, show the benefits, and then take it to the road association, the truck association, I think it has a lot of potential. It's just that how can we take it forward?
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Prabal sir. Thank you, Professor Debjit, for that short interaction and letting us know of your insights. Today, we also have Mr. Chandrasekhar Balasubramaniam ji with us. So he is the joint chairman of DBMS Board of Trustees that runs a number of schools and colleges in the eastern part of India. He is the retired senior GM of finance from Tata Tin Plate Limited. And he has also been a visiting faculty at XLRI Jamshedpur in the area of finance. So Chandrasekhar sir, if you could share your opinions and your thoughts in this particular regard.
Thank you very much, Rajiv, for inviting me, as well as giving an opportunity to share my thought. Number one is that my humble respect to Professor Sen, Prabal Sen, and very great compliment to the two learned speakers. As you rightly said in my introduction, we run a number of schools in Jamshedpur and a college. And one of the important aspects, the schools are 2 minutes. One of the important aspects, both ICSE and CBSE curriculum want us to develop is more vocational courses. So in the long run, as Professor Debjit Roy correctly said, there's acute shortage of drivers. So if the CPS councils can be persuaded to introduce heavy vehicle driving, commercial vehicle driving as a curriculum in the +2 level in the schools, as these children go out and quite a lot of them don't want to pursue further education, be it technical or other education. They want to come back to profession, so they can learn, they can earn, they can be professional drivers of these commercial or heavy vehicles. That will add a lot of ease out the situation of shortage of drivers. That is one aspect, and the other aspect is that transporters as well as the service receivers have to realize that this is a very important profession, and they have to be respected, and they have to be paid adequately so that it attracts more people in this profession. As it happens, I have seen the United States and Japan, they are paid very well. So the youngsters choose this as the profession, and they are quite happy with this. So if that can be done, like our school teachers who are not paid very well in India, if they are paid very well, they will attract a lot of teachers in our teaching profession also in the schools. Same thing is there in the transportation of heavy vehicles. That's a very important aspect of the economy, and realizing this, if the service receivers are willing to pay adequately to this important chain in the supply chain management of the transportation business, we will definitely attract youngsters and more professionals, and those who are they should choose this as a profession rather than as a last resort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chandrasekhar sir, for sharing your insights on this. Today we also have Ramesh Nand Rajogji. So he is the former executive director at TRF Limited, and he has also been the senior vice president of finance at Tata Steel. So Ramesh sir, if you can also share your inputs for this particular sector today.
Thank you, Rajiv ji. I have been attending your presentations on 23rd as well as now. It has been a learning platform for me. In fact, the first presentation on 23rd, I was surprised in certain cases the cost component of transportation is so high. And even if we can, by digitization and proper management, reduce it by 5% or 10%, this is going to make hell of a lot of difference. So there is so much potential. The more and more I've been, in fact, I had never got involved with this. The more and more I'm learning, and I'm finding from Professor Roy, Debjit Roy, and others, phenomenal prospects are available. And what Mr. Chandrasekhar mentioned, in US, the driver gets almost $10 per hour. And if case he has to work overtime, the money goes to $20 per hour. One of our fellow friends who was studying there used to do this work during his holidays, and all his funding he used to do. Now, if we are saving a lot of money, obviously the drivers can be paid well, and the quality of drivers will improve. Quality of drivers will definitely improve, because right now they are, as they say, if you pay peanuts, you will get monkeys. And that is what has been happening. We don't pay the drivers well, and we don't get good drivers. So thanks, Rajiv, for educating me. And I'm definitely very much thankful to all the speakers. And in fact, today as well as the 23rd, phenomenal knowledge gain I have got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh sir, for sharing your insights and also your inputs in this particular regard. Now I would move over to handing the session over to Tathagat ji, who would extend the formal vote of thanks and also close this session for us today. So Tathagat ji, if you can please do the needful. Tathagat ji is not being able to hear us, I think.
I received a message that there is some connectivity issue. So you can move ahead.
Okay. So in that case, maybe Rajiv ji, you can take over if he cannot connect with us in a while.
All right. So this is really a pleasure hearing the two eminent learned speakers, and what we are trying to do and what we are trying to look into the transportation and logistic industry. This was really insightful to gain knowledge from both the speakers, one from the academic perspective and the research perspective. And we also are trying to establish one R&D department that where we have lots and lots of things identified in this area, which we need to address through our application and through the marketing and through awareness or skill development kind of things. And on line of that, I also would like to thank Vice President of NIF, Shri Rajive NPG, who enlightened us, and I believe that we will have cooperation from the government of India also on this part to innovate in this field and to achieve more heights in this area. And I also would like to thank, so with this, I would like to close this session and thank our esteemed speaker. And I also would like to thank our advisor, Professor Prabal Kumar Sen sir, our guest speakers, Balachandra Sekhar Subramaniam sir, Ramesh Nandarajok sir, Abhilash Acharya ji, the Chief Strategic Advisor of KCMconnect, as well as Project Convoy. We also have our CTO in this meeting room, Prabhat Kumar Verma. So I also would like to thank him on behalf of Convoy. I also would like to thank all our participants who participated today, and I believe that they also had a good gain out of this season. In case anyone will have any question, they can write to us. They have received the email information also, so they can write to us, and we'll try to address that problem. And we hope that that we will be able to get those answers from our speakers directly. So with this, I thank everyone. Yeah, over to Abhilash ji.
Thank you very much, Rajiv ji, for handling and closing this session towards the end and your formal vote of thanks. I thank all our esteemed guests and even the participants for being with us today. I would like you all to visit our website and our social media pages to catch up on whatever you might have missed in the past regarding the webinars and the interesting things we have been doing across multiple sectors and multiple verticals through our webinar series. So do catch up with that and share your feedback with us. Hope to meet you soon again for another webinar with us, and also for other panel discussions, which would be around about this month and also in the next months as well. So thank you for being with us. Thank you, everyone. I would like to call this session as closed for today.
Thank you.
I would request all our speaker and guest speaker, including Prabal sir, to remain in the room, and formally we are close. We have closed this session.